You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi, it's me, Steve, Mighty Blue. Once again, I've got to apologise for not posting for a while, but as you're going to hear in these next two shows, things have gone from wonderful to lousy. Many of you may already know that I've been off the trail for a few days with an infection, but I'll get to that later in the next show. In the meantime, welcome to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, where I share my, until now, uninterrupted journey along the AT in 2019. There are going to be no conversations this week, just a recounting of the amazing White Mountains and the time that I've had going through them with Trigger and Cushy. Let's get straight to it. We left you last week as I was about to go just a couple of miles up to Liberty Spring campsite, ready to hit Franconia Ridge the following morning with several days of glorious weather anticipated. Let's hear how it turned out. Day number 149, Liberty Springs campsite, mile 1821.5, to Gale Head Hut, mile 1831.9, a 10.4 mile day. Just to catch up with you, really, we need to talk about what happened the day before. We were going to do this 2 miles. We set out from Franconia Notch, and it was a tough climb. So I'm glad we got it out of the way before we went up to the ridge the following morning, because I know 2 miles doesn't sound much, but it was a good long 2 miles, and we were delighted when we got there. As often, as always, in fact, in the White Mountains, these campsites are manned by an attendant or a superintendent or whatever he calls them, a ranger. And they charge you $10, I think, for this site, or $5 if you've tented in one of their sites before. And we were given a tent site, a wooden platform, and they said they had 4 tents on it. Well, there were 3 of us. There was me and Trigger and a young guy called Nash, not a section hiker, turned up. And we were all put on the same platform. God, I didn't think we were going to get on there at all. And for the very first time, I had to use my flex freestanding kit to make my tent fit on a tent platform. There's nothing to stake out into. You can kind of use these eyelets on the side, but it doesn't work really well. So you really need to have one of these freestanding tents. So I set it up, and it was surprisingly easy to set up, and it did give me a lot more room inside my tent, I must say. I've got some issues still with some water getting in if it rains, but I will work that out. But it worked out pretty well, and it gives you tons of headroom. It's amazing. So we did the 2 miles. So on this morning, the day 149 morning, we were told we had to have our breakfast away from the tent site, and so the breakfast was basically at where the bear boxes were. And Trigger and I sat around, and a young lady called Hoot, who just spent a couple of years in Nepal with the Peace Corps, had breakfast together. Kind of a convivial morning. It was quite nice, actually. Then we had a really strenuous hike up to the turnoff for the Liberty Mountain summit, because that's where we were. We'd climbed up Liberty Mountain. And then to get to Franconia Ridge, instead of going to the summit, which is a spur trail, the AT turns left and you go towards Franconia Ridge. So looking forward to that, I can tell you. We then went down, and I don't remember doing that before. Went down quite a bit, and then up again, and then we emerged above tree line. If you've never done it, it is the most miraculous thing to see and feel and experience. It's like immersion onto another planet. And I found it exciting first time, and I was kind of worried that I wouldn't find it as exciting this time. I needed to worry. It was incredible. Once more, it was just incredible. You see things you would never see in real life. It's an epic view. There's a little Hayset Mountain in the distance, which not too far distance actually. And then in the far distance, there's this steep open climb up Mount Lincoln. And the path is rocky, and you have to stick to the path because of the fragility of these rare species of alpine plants. And the funny thing is that despite Lincoln looking so tall and unattainable, I knew, and certainly Trigger knew from the profile, that Mount Lafayette was right behind it and even taller and more majestic. And I'd forgotten that actually. And I looked at the profile, I said, I actually thought Lincoln was Lafayette. And I started working out where the various peaks were. I thought, no, that's Lincoln up there. Lafayette's behind it and is even taller. It was almost unbelievable, actually. And we just climbed up these mountains and climbed down and climbed up again. And Lincoln was a push, and we got up there, and there's Lafayette ahead of us. Open, magnificent, and just wonderful. It was a beautiful sunny day because for miles and miles and miles. And we'd actually arranged to meet Cushy at Lafayette. She decided to not do the ridge, and she'd stayed below the summit of Lafayette, a green leaf hut, the evening before. She'd done the ridge tons of times, and she probably did it last winter, so it's part of her through hike anyway. And when we got there, we meant to meet her at 9:30, because we did take our time to get there, because we just wanted to take in the beauty of the day. We were about 15 minutes late. She'd been there for an hour already, though, so she was enjoying it up there. And it's just glorious, and lots of people there. It's obviously a popular site, and we just sat around looking around us. And it's difficult to put across to you that how beautiful this part of the world is. But we had to go on, so the path then bends down to the right before heading down, and then there's a very, very steep climb up Mount Garfield, also in the distance. And incongruously, at the top of Garfield, there's this dismantled fire tower leaving a concrete base that you could actually get into to keep out of the wind. But there's no need for it on this day. It was a beautiful sunny day. There was a breeze, but it wasn't bad at all. And so the three of us sat down and had lunch, and it was just one of those hiking days that makes you realise, and I've certainly realised this more this time than last time, that having great weather is the key to enjoying your hiking. And I just had a glorious day on this day. So we had lunch, and then we had an even steeper climb down, and left us just a few more miles to get us all to Galehead Hut. I'd never done this before, staying in the hut as a paid guest. I'd done work for stay, and for those of you who don't know, work for stay is when you turn up at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or later, and you say, "Can I do work for stay?" to some youngster who's in charge there. And they get you to scrub in dishes, and really you're just doing something so you can stay the night, and they give you food. But they're much more accommodating this time than they were last time. And even though I wasn't doing work for stay, I was staying there as a guest. I've noticed through these huts that the staff are so much friendlier this time than they were last time. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was my attitude. I don't know. But I really enjoyed the staff, even when I wasn't paying to stay in the hut. But this time we were going to be... Actually, we got somebody else's booking, and we had to pay for just one of us as well. So it was worthwhile. And I really enjoyed it. Food was excellent. I was comfortable in my bunk, and it was well worth doing. So that was the end of a glorious day, day number 149. Day 150. Galehead Hut, mile 1831.9 to Crawford Notch, mile 1846.6, a 14.7 mile day. The profile when we got up on this morning showed us that we had an initial major climb up South Twin Mountain, which will be followed by a meandering descent down into Crawford Notch. Now, it didn't quite work out that way, because it never does, but the general direction after that big climb up was definitely down that day. The climb up South Twin was tough, but no tougher than any others we'd done. It's become very apparent to me, even more so, how this trail is so designed, or so seems to be so designed, to get you ready for the whites. It's wonderful up there. It's tough. It's harder than anything we've done. but we're ready for it. Our legs are ready for it. I'm getting up these mountains better and better each time. I still stop all the time. I still need a breather, probably more than the others need a breather. But it is just fun to do, and we're ready for it. No question about that. And so we got to the top of South Twin, and there were wonderful 360-degree views of the top, and it was a rocky summit. And it's like the reward you get for climbing up a mountain. You got this. You can look around everywhere. It's your treat for having put in all the work. We passed up and over Mount Gio and Zealand Mountain, and we're knocking off some of these New Hampshire 4,000 footers. Apparently, it's a bit of a thing they do. There are 48 4,000 footers. There are more 4,000 footers than that 48, but it has to qualify in terms of ascent up it and distance from other mountains. But we've passed a few of these 4,000 footers. Then after those, there was a long downhill that brought us to Zealand Hut, and we were quite tired after that. We bought some potato and dill soup and a coffee when we were at the hut, which is always nice to have just something, as recognition. We're just filling our face, obviously, after a bit of hard work. And some of these downs, because of the ups, obviously, are quite steep as well. And I remember the trail from last time past Zealand Hut, and I didn't actually stay in the hut last time, either work for stay or pay, but I found a really good stealth campsite, a couple of miles past, maybe a mile past Zealand Hut. And we had almost a tented village down there that day, but we didn't need it because this was only lunchtime. So, but I remember that walk along there was nice and flat, and it was about 4 miles long. I don't remember it being as long as that. And he went through the forest, and then it opened up and took in the dramatic White Wall slide. It's a boulder slide on the side of White Wall Mountain, and the views were clear, and it's great to be away from rocks and roots for those few miles. The path was, as I say, flat, and it was dirt, and just so enjoyable to walk through without having to look down at your feet all the time, because when you've got a lot of rocks and roots, that's all you're doing. You're just looking down at your feet. You can't see anything at all. It's probably why we've only seen one bear on this trip. I bet there's been a whole menagerie of animals as we go past them. We just don't see them because we've got our heads down all the time. After that, there was this another 4 mile. It was a stretch, but it was just a gentle rise up before diving back down to Crawford Notch. And it was a good day. We thoroughly enjoyed it. And me, Cushy, and Trig were hiking together all day long, and it was just another beautiful day. And Cushy's friends, Greg and Jeannie Connolly, had come to collect us at the Notch, and we drove to their truly fabulous wood cabin with amazing views of Lafayette and Mount Cannon. That is the way to do a bit of hiking, I tell you. They were so generous with they just gave us food and drink, and we just reveled in the place and could do our laundry, obviously, good sleep, good conversation, and good people to spend time with. And I know I've been lucky enough to be doing this trip probably easier than many people have done it in terms of, the things I've had given to me on the trail. But frankly, when you've got the opportunity to do something like this and somebody offers to help you out or put you up, it's been lovely to be able to take advantage of that. And I still don't think that I've invalidated the integrity of my hike at all. I've been in tent quite a few times, but things like this are just lovely to have. So that's the end of day number 150, which I suppose in itself is a bit of a milestone. Day 151, Crawford Notch, mile 1846.6 to Mount Washington, mile 1859.1, a 12.5 mile day. With the weather still gloriously on our side, 3 straight days of sun is unheard of, I tell you. We separated from Cushy once more for our starting of the presidential range. She's ready to be done with the hike, no question about it. And she wanted to descend both sides of Mount Washington because she could slack pack it. So Trigger and I wanted to go the more usual way of slogging up to the top and then down the other side. But she was driven to the top of Washington, came down the the south side towards us, and the next day she was going to go up and join us going down the north side. So she'd get the miles, and she'd done the miles, and she could slap pack it, which is what she really wanted to do. But Trigger and I went for the long slog, and the original target for us was from Crawford Notch up to Lake of the Clouds Hut, which was actually what I did last time in 2014. Ended up doing work for stay at Lake of the Clouds Hut. And that's actually about a mile, I think it's about a mile short of the summit of Mount Washington. But as often happens, our plans changed. And I can remember, and I was so anticipating rather this particular trip in the presidential range. I'd done it before, but I hadn't seen a thing. I think there was no fog or no cloud for the first climb when I did it last time, but I saw nothing for the rest of the day. Literally, when I was walking down towards Lake of the Clouds with my friends last time, I couldn't see the hut until I was about 50 yards away. Today, we saw on this particular day, we saw everything. The first peak was Mount Webster, about a 2,600 foot climb in about 3.5 miles, which is quite intense and quite a long way, but and the peak, once we got there, was great. But it was the regular views from the cliffs on the way that really take your breath away. The path comes out towards these granite cliffs, and you can stand on the edge there just looking down a couple of thousand feet below you, look into the distance to the mountainsides, and looking up always, looking out always for the bigger mountains around us. And it was a great climb up. It's almost as if you got 3 or 4 different peaks on the way up, so you could look around and just get these almost 360 degree views, probably about, 250 degree views. Once to the top, we could really keep our eye on the prize, Mount Washington. It dominates everything around it. It is the second tallest, highest part of the AT, and it feels like the highest. Cleveland's Dome never felt that high. It just dominates the whole area. It's just a magnificent situation. And Mounts Jackson and Pierce were both summited, and we had those clear views of Washington all the way. And by the time we got to Lake of the Clouds, it was actually only 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We looked up at Washington. There was not a cloud. Apparently, there are only 40 days a year that Washington isn't under cloud. So we sat in Lake of the Clouds thinking, maybe we could go on to Madison Spring Hut, which is another 6 miles. I was doubting myself at the time, I must admit. I had started coughing a bit at that stage, and I didn't know what was happening to me. It wasn't bothering me. I was just coughing, and I thought I just had a bit of a cough. It did develop later. So we sat there for a couple of minutes and thought, are we going to go on? Are we not going to go on? And Trigger is always ready to go, and Trigger would go on at any time. So I said, let's go on then. Let's go for it and see what happens. But the climb up Washington is surprisingly easy after the Lake of the Clouds Hut. And we got there still in sunlight, a bright sunlight and no cloud, in about half an hour, maybe 3/4 of an hour. Unfortunately, of course, I fell again. I slipped on a rock, fall number 26, by the way. I slipped on a rock 30 yards from the top. I couldn't believe it. I was just thinking to myself, I've done pretty well recently. Boom, I went over. God, it drives me crazy. It really does. Didn't hurt myself, so I was okay. It was one of those slow falls where you kind of lose it, and then you just go over. And so it still counts as a fall, I guess. And you get to the top, and it's pretty full because there's a cog railway that goes up there. There's a car park. The people go up on the Auto Road. Very expensive to go up there. There's a snack shop. And it's certainly not the wilderness up there, let me tell you. But it's a great place to visit, and we tucked into chili and Snickers, and Trigger had even more food, but there were tons of food we had. And it was really nice, and we realised really that we didn't think we could go on much further. We didn't think we'd be able to get to Madison Spring Hut. So I started thinking about what we could do to end the day there, because it was now about 4 o'clock, 4:15. And I didn't think we could get to Madison Spring Hut. And frankly, the experience of climbing down from Washington the following day was pretty tricky. And I think we would have taken a long time to have got to the hut if we'd had that climb downhill at the end of our day. Oh, by the way, we did pass Cushy, obviously, on the way down. And, I think actually she took a tougher route than us in many ways, because to climb down that mountain twice really stresses your knees, no question about it. And I think I'm happy with the way we did it anyway. And so I was looking for ways to get down. Could have gone the Cog Railway, but somebody said that takes you to the wrong side of the mountain if you want to go into Gorham. So a guy said to me, well, speak to the lady in the gift shop, and she might be able to give you a rundown there. And so I went in there, and this lady was talking to me. It was $50 each one way. I said, that's ridiculous. We can't afford that. So I don't know if it was my boyish charm or my British accent, or I looked so pissed off. But we negotiated a price in the end. It was less than $50, and it was from two ways. So we wouldn't get a lift back up the following morning. And she was good as a word. About 5:15, she was leaving, so we went back there, and we headed down the mountain. And it was very interesting, actually, because she told us about the 4 separate climates we were in, effectively, and the different stages of the mountain. It was about an 8-mile journey down the mountain. So actually, it was better value than I was thinking, because it was kind of a guided tour, really, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So we went down, and I was originally going to stay in the Rattle River hostel. I tried to, but they said they had no room. So I called a place called Libby's. Went to somewhere called the Barn. The bed and breakfast was full, I believe, at the time, and the Barn is a hostel, and it was darn good. I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. They're proper beds in a large room at the top, at the top of this barn, and down below there's a sitting area, and it's very cozy, right in the middle of town. Great access to restaurants. I highly recommend the barn, and the bar. So Trigger and I went there and booked actually for 2 nights, because we knew we'd be coming back the following day. So that is the end of day number 151. Day number 152. Mount Washington, mile 1859.1 to Pinkham Notch Visitor Centre, mile 1872.6, a 13.5-mile day. I've got to tell you, actually, we're averaging pretty well through the whites, better than I did last time, apart from, we did that 2-mile day up Liberty Spring campsite after a rainy morning, so I kind of don't really count that. In terms of our miles per day, we're doing pretty darn well. Paul, the hostel owner, drove us back to the trail at around 7:30 the following morning, and we knew our shuttle wasn't going back up the mountain until 8:30, so we sat around, and of course we had breakfast. There's a cafe at the Auto Road Centre, so you go in there, it's quite a good place actually, nice food, and you can get yourself sorted out for a shuttle, and 8:30 was the first shuttle. We didn't see Cushy at all until we were on the 8:30 shuttle, about to move out, because she'd got back to her friends. Her husband had turned up, and so she was spending the night with her friends again, Greg and Jeannie, who we'd stayed at 2 nights before. And so as we were driving off in the shuttle, we saw Cushy get out of a car as we drove off. So we couldn't say anything to her. And so, to be honest with you, we just wanted to get started, to get into it. At the top once more, it wasn't cloudy. So we had 2 days at the top of Mount Washington, not in cloud, which was great. So at the top we set off. We knew she'd catch us. She's very, very agile on these rocks, Cushy, and it's her area. She knows how to climb these rocks. So we set off, and it's a very rocky path. And what I'd forgotten from last time, probably because I didn't even notice, because I was so socked in with fog last time, several of these mountains aren't past at the summit in the presidentials. There's spur trails if you want to go up them, but these kind of skirted the mountain. You're still quite a way up them, but you're not at the very summit. It surprised me, but it was very gratifying, let me tell you. Now you don't have to climb another couple of 100 feet to get to the top is kind of nice. We eventually got to Madison Spring Hut, and as we thought it might happen, Cushy called up with us. She got the 9 o'clock shuttle. She got straight to it, and she'd really moved fast, so we were together again. And the climb down to Madison was quite intense. It's not you're walking on a path, but often you're just simply rock hopping, walking on rocks from one rock to a next, to a next, to a next. And you've really got to be careful about where you place your feet. And it's quite intense. It's more intense than I thought it would be, and certainly more intense than I recall. But because it was nice and dry, it was relatively easy. We weren't slipping that much, so that was kind of nice. And I remembered from last time, my climb up Mount Madison was my absolute favourite climb I've ever done in my life. I remember saying at the time, I just flew up this mountain. It's like you imagine a mountain to be, which is like pointed at the top and down, like a pyramid almost. It was basically rock scrambling all the way up there. And because I seem to have developed a passion for that on this trip, I flew up it last time and I flew up it again as well. I was ahead of the other guys to the top by about 4 or 5 minutes. And I think, and I don't think I'm exaggerating here, it was about 15 to 20 minutes to get up Mount Madison from Mount Madison Hut. And for an old guy like me, that was pretty darn good. And I just thoroughly enjoyed it once more. But the climb down is flipping horrendous. And that once again is rock hopping, but once you get below, and that in itself is taxing and difficult. But once you get below tree line, it is awful. And some of the climbs down were darn dangerous. Funny enough, I've seen something on Facebook recently where somebody mentioned there should perhaps be some red routes, or some blue routes rather, around some of these more difficult descents. Because in rain, they are catastrophic. And I actually did fall number 27. I fell and banged my hip again. I've banged my hip a few times now, and it really gave me some jip for a couple of hours. But it's fine now. And there was rain towards the end of the day. And not much, but it was still coming down, and we've got a bit of rain on the rocks, but you let yourself down almost hanging onto some of the tree roots or hanging onto the tree trunks, and my pictures will not do justice to the angle of descent of this particular trip down, and I found it very, very difficult. But it only started pouring torrential rain once we were at the Pinkham Notch Visitors Centre, fortunately, and Rob met us there, Rob's Cush's husband, with beers and a Gatorade. What a guy. What more could you possibly want? And it was a great day's hiking. It was hard work, and we were very happy. Cush's at Rattle River, and we're at the barn, so we got a lift back to the barn. Had another great evening at a local restaurant, and I really enjoyed my time doing this, and I felt pretty good. But once again, I was coughing up a storm and coughing more and more, and that was going to develop in the next few days. But that is the end of day number 152. So, you've seen me through the Presidential Range and through Franconia Ridge and over Mount Washington in absolutely glorious weather. I don't think I've felt better on this entire journey. I felt strong, I felt energised, and I felt very capable of doing anything that was coming up. Apart from my ticklish cough, things couldn't have been better. All of that was about to change, and you're going to hear about that next time. So, I'll see you next time.